taken a multi-pronged approach to get more familiar with the subject of trade, which can be quite technical and quite complicated when you get into some of these issues. Obviously, the most important part, I think, is developing sources. So I've tried to develop a variety of sources. With trade, there are a lot of different people that you can talk to. A lot of trade groups in Washington that have been extremely helpful, able to connect you with workers or companies in various industries that can tell their stories. Obviously, people inside the government are extremely helpful as well, whether it's the official spokespeople at various government agencies or developing closer sources within the government or speaking with people at Congress. And then on an economic subject like trade, I think it's very important to reach out to economists, think tanks, academics. And so I've really tried to have longer conversations with them to understand the fundamentals of trade and what they think about policy today. One of the things I love about trade is that it really focuses on objects that we find around us every day. And in that way, even if it's and kind of an obscure government policy, it's something that people can relate to. It's, the timber that is being imported that goes into their wood fence, or it affects the price of your car or the things you're buying at the supermarket. And so a lot of some of my stories have focused around that and using people's relationships to these familiar products to tell trade stories in a more compelling way. And with that, there's a lot of reliance on different multimedia sources as well. So I have been fortunate both at the Washington Post and at the New York Times to work with our video teams to make some short videos, to have great photographers come out on site with me when I'm visiting factories or visiting workers in different locations. Also at the Times to have something called a 360 camera come out to a location with me, which allows the readers to move their phone around or use their cursor to look around these various environments. And then creating videos, both explanatory videos or capturing video on the scene, to have that go into stories as well. This is a story I stumbled on at the Port of New Orleans. I was visiting the port to talk to dock workers there who are actually quite affected by the steel and aluminum tariffs that the president has put into place, because a lot of steel that comes into the United States comes through the Port of New Orleans. It's then put on barges there and moves up the Mississippi River. But while I was there talking with dock workers, I also stumbled on this other idea, which was tracing a piece of steel from its original destination, or from its origin, through the Port of New Orleans and then to its destination. And so I was able to go onto a ship and see some Japanese steel, traced it back to a factory in Japan that had made that product, and then traced it up a barge on the Mississippi River to an aerosol can factory, and from there to a Ready Whip factory, and from there to your ice cream sundae. So hopefully demonstrating some of the more tangible effects of trade policy. I looked at a variety of projects actually when I was considering this story, and those stood out to me because they were quintessentially American and they had kind of unusual stories. So I think sometimes you have a preconceived notion of what trade stories are going to be, but in this case the focus with bacon was that agricultural products also have international supply chains. So that supply chain for bacon had gone back and forth across the border with Canada. For jeans, part of the story was about the apparel industry in the United States being offshored, but the message was that the location of offshoring can really matter. So the apparel industry that has moved to Asia, does not support jobs in the United States, but some of the apparel industry that has moved to Mexico is closely tied with industries in the United States like cotton or thread and continues to support jobs here. And the same thing with beer. There was a supply chain there that goes back and forth over the border with Mexico that was very affected by the implementation of NAFTA. So I thought about other products as well. Flat screen TVs could have been fun, but it doesn't begin with a B. And I thought those three were just such iconic American products. It would be a good fit. I think, trade policy and the numbers behind it are really fascinating. And, you just have to bring that data to life. Whether trade policy is really about the products that are moving all around the world. It's about people. It's about their livelihoods in various factories. It's about clashes between the United States and foreign governments. So, what could be more exciting than that?